Okay, so is everybody still there?
Hello.
Hey, hi,
Hey,
sis.
hi, folks.
I'm glad you are here. Okay, so today we have Dr. Decio here to talk to us, and today is December the 10th. And as usual, we does start with a just a sec over here. As usual, we does start with a prayer. So yeah, so and we do that, so we ask protection not only for us but also for our group and everyone in need. And evidently we want to make sure that we are in sync with the mentors of this group, with the mentors of each one of us. So let's close our eyes, relax, and think of the higher spirits. Invite our mentors, invite the good spirits to be here with us today. We have an invitee and a very knowledgeable person that will be talking to us. So, dear brother Jesus, as we gather here today to learn from the spirit teachings, from your loving message, and from the message Dr. Decio Iandoli Jr. bring us today, we ask you please to come beside us now. Lead us on our study, on the days ahead of us, and through the time when our mind cannot cope. Help us to find peace and calming inner thoughts. Bless and guide Dr. Decio Iandoli so he can transmit all teachings he planned to share today with us. You hold us safe, dear Jesus, and please do the same for this group, for Dr. Decio and his family, for our mentors present here, for our family members, our houses, our relatives, all of those crossing our mind right now, and for all of those in need. And so be it. All right, so just as a reminder, just wanted to say that the mechanics of mediumship we just finished, and after 1 year was a wonderful experience. We had this encounter here in Houston, lots of learning being shared with particularly I was very happy and to see you all here and to meet you all. The good thing is we are going to handle a second encounter in May 2023, probably late May, and then you are all welcome to come over. We will just continue to work on the topic mechanics of mediumship. And evidently all of that under the perspective of Allan Kardec. This is our agenda. I want to show this just as a quick reminder. We are holding this lecture with Dr. Decio Iandoli today. There will be one more meeting to study the Spirit's book. That's going to be on December the 17th. And then there will be a vacation time. So again, last meeting, December the 17th, and then we'll be back on January the 21st. There will be a meeting being held on January 21st. Also, I want to say this. If you want to share some Christmas card, I was given this idea, and he gave us this idea of just putting our address on the chat, and then we can share and exchange some Christmas cards. You know, in the past, we used to do that. Today, we no longer do. We just send a note, we just send a text. But if you feel like you want to receive or send someone a Christmas card, just put your address on the chat, and then I'll make sure that you guys will have it. Okay. Thank you, Annie, for okay, let me mute. Thank you, Annie, for giving this idea. And like I said, so today we have a very important person over here with us, a very knowledgeable person, Dr. Decio Iandoli Jr. He is a Brazilian physician and professor at the University of Medicine of UNIDERP in Mato Grosso do Sul, which is a state in Brazil, federal state in Brazil. He is also the president of the Medical-Spiritist Association. In Portuguese, the acronym for this is AME, and I love this acronym because it's one of the declinations of the verb love. So AME for Association, a Medical-Spiritist Association, or in Portuguese, Associação Medico-Espirita. And he is the current vice president of that AME International, as well as medical coordinator of the Academic Department of that institution. He's also author of very known books. Those books, they are in Portuguese. Some of them, they are in the process to be translated into Italian, French, and in English. This one, the Triune, I guess, Brain, is going to be in English version pretty soon. So, and evidently he is a very known lecturer, not only in Brazil, but also here in US and in Europe. With that, I will go ahead and start with this video that Dr. Iandoli gently prepared, especially for this group. And we did some translation into English. So we recorded that translation. And after we watch this video, there will be a Q&A session. And then if needed, then there will be consecutive translation. But for now, we are going to watch this video that Dr. Decio recorded, especially for us today. And after 40 minutes or so, there will be a Q&A session, okay? So you guys let me know if you cannot hear very well, if you cannot see, but I hope everybody can see and hear.
Hello, my name is Dr. Decio Iandoli Jr. I'm a physician, surgeon, and a professor of physiology. I study spirituality and health, and one of the books that I have written is called Reincarnation as a Biological Law. Reincarnation is a topic that has been discussed as a religious dogmatic topic. Actually, this has to do with a biological law that progressively has been clarified, and it is of utmost importance. From a scientific perspective, we use the word palingenesis to refer to reincarnation. So what could that mean, and what is its role? Palingenesis means being born again in a new body, different from resurrection, of course, because of course we know that many religions believe in resurrection. Palingenesis, reincarnation, is different, and it is different from a biological and scientific perspective. So it is impossible. It means that you have to go back to the same bodies after you die. Of course, your body degrades. it rots, so it's not possible to be born again in the same body. So when we talk about reincarnation, we're talking about something else. The intelligent principle is the same, and it's possible to renew its biological apparatus, physical apparatus, in many opportunities. That's why we use the word reincarnation. So the intelligent principle of the being goes back to a new biological body, a material body, a new organism, a living organism. This process of reincarnation works as a mechanism of evolution of intelligences. It is a meta system, which means that it is a system that works on a biological system, but it's not that body. And this system is intelligence. That's why we call it intelligent principle. This principle is not material. Therefore, if you want to start developing this idea, we have to talk about dualism. A monist is a person that just believes that matter exists. Everything that exists stems from matter. Dualists believe that there is something that is not material. In this case, intelligence, and we can name it differently. For instance, throughout human history, throughout the development of sciences, this principle has had many names. We use the name intelligent principle. It learns and it evolves. This principle changes. So its connection with matter, of course, depends on many factors, and it gets experiences, and consequently, these experiences are going to teach the principle through a pedagogical process. It is an attempt procedure, and of course, sometimes we make mistakes, sometimes we get the right answer. When we get right answers, we have positive results, and this, of course, reinforces our behavior. When we make mistakes, of course, we have unpleasant results. They're going to make us avoid repeating this behavior. We are talking about trial and error. We have to give it a shot. If you want to, of course, use a bow and arrow, it's tough, of course. The first times you use this tool, you're going to make mistakes. As time goes by, you're going to be able to hit bullseye. So, of course, this requires practice. People that are beginners are going to make mistakes. There's no way of learning without even trying. And, of course, if you try, you make mistakes. Consequently, when we talk about evolution, when we talk about the intelligent principle, learning and new experiences and learning new situations and making decisions. And sometimes it makes mistakes, sometimes it doesn't make mistakes. It learns through experience. It has bad results, good results. It learns. And through learning, the intelligent principle evolves. So what are the arguments to believe in reincarnation? So let's divide these arguments into two groups, the philosophical and the scientific arguments. Let's talk about the scientific arguments first. What does science say about this? So, in my opinion, reincarnation is a biological law that's going to talk about experimental and conceptual ideas. Okay, so now let's talk about those spiritual ideas. What is life? I have to tell you something really interesting. When I learned that biology wasn't able to define life, that made me really angry. So biology, which is the science that studies life, doesn't define what life is. I mean, how is that possible? That was something that I could not accept. That bothered me. There is a very interesting author called Lynn Margulis. She is one of the most important biologists in the 21st century, and she wrote a book called What is Life? In that book, Dr. Lynn Margulis talks about the topic, of course, and throughout the book, she admits that life cannot be defined. And I'm going to quote a sentence from the book. She says that life is like kissing your own elbow or being able to look with your own eyes at your optic nerves. I mean, that's impossible, of course. There's another excerpt from a book. Here we go. She says that life is an island of order in an ocean of chaos. So we can understand that Margulis's opinion is related to the dualistic perspective. So matter is entropic, it tends to chaos, to disorder, and life and intelligence is entropic. It is organized. In order to have life, of course, we have to have intelligence. And if we want to have intelligence, we have to have the principle interacting with matter. Consequently, this group of matter and intelligent principle, when they are associated, they are going to make up the being, the living being. And of course, biology studies beings and living beings. We know that when biology talks about their properties that beings have. Nevertheless, there are still some confusing issues. There's some controversy about this topic. When we talk about viruses, are they alive? Are they not alive? So it raises controversy. So biology in general doesn't define viruses as living creatures, but it reproduces, it multiplies, it interferes with other beings, living beings. So viruses, of course, have many attributes of living beings, but it cannot reproduce in an autonomous way. It is an obligate parasite. It means that when it is outside the organism, it's just a capsule of ribonucleic acid or deoxyribonucleic acid. They are very simple structures. So for many biologists, it is a living being. For other biologists, it's not. So when we want to define what life is, according to dualism, that says that not only do we have matter, but we have another kind of organization, we're able to find a good definition for life. In my book, Reincarnation as a Biological Law, I talk about that. Let's talk about what biology is. Intelligent factor that is not material, entropic, and negative, long-lasting, that is able to associate itself with material elements in order to manifest its capacities in order to evolve. In other words, due to the fact that we admit that there is something that goes beyond matter, and this thing interacts with matter and it organizes it, I think that could be a good definition for life. It's quite reasonable, to be honest. So why can't we define life from a materialistic perspective? Because it's not just matter. So when we follow a monist paradigm, and we also call it reductionist paradigm, anything that doesn't fit this paradigm, anything that is not material, it, it cannot be understood through common analysis. So life cannot be understood through those lenses because it's not material, but it acts on matter. So if life acts on matter, it has to precede matter. So when we talk about life, when it organizes a living being, it pre-exists this body. Therefore, it doesn't depend on that body to exist. It existed before that body, it associates itself with that body, and it continues existing with the body. Okay. When this connection is lost after the biological death, it's going to continue existing, of course, because it pre-existed the matter. So what I'm trying to say is that they are independent. Therefore, it continues existing. If it was able to connect itself to a biological body and it continues existing, it, of course, can do this over and over again in other opportunities. What I'm trying to say is that when we talk about the definition of life, it forces us to choose a post-materialistic paradigm, a dualistic paradigm. This definition leads to the idea that reincarnation or palingenesis, it is a need, it is an evolutionary need. It's something that has to happen. Biological processes have to happen again, and they're part of growth processes and evolutionary processes. This is one of the most important concepts. Let me say something else about another concept. I'm going to talk about the evolution of species. In general, we have four theories, I would say, regarding evolution of species. The first one comes from Lamarck, the scientist. Lamarck used to say that the roe makes the organ. This is Diderot's aphorism, the French thinker that, of course, existed before Lamarck. Necessity, of course, leads to learning, demands learning, and of course, this learning changes the principle, the intelligent principle, and this principle changes biology, the biological body. Lamarck was the first person to go against creationism. Creationism is a theory that says that God created everything that exists. Some creationists say that this, of course, encompasses everything apart from human beings. And some things encompass human beings but do not encompass other beings. So this is really random or arbitrary. But when we talk about Lamarck, we're talking about observation. And it's true, Lamarck's ideas were abandoned because biologists noticed that modifications in the phenotype would not lead to changes in the genes, in the genotypes. So the changes on an animal's body, for example, the animal had to make lots of effort to conduct a specific action. All kinds of changes do not change this animal's genes. Consequently, of course, the animal had to change its body, but these characteristics, these changes cannot be transmitted to the offspring. Because of that, Lamarck's ideas were abandoned. Nowadays, thanks to epigenetics, these Lamarck's ideas were studied again. Epigenetics talks about how the environment can change the animal depending on the way the animal reacts to the environment, how this can have an impact on genes and how those characteristics can be transmitted to the offspring. That's why the people who defend this are called neo-Lamarckists, because they agree with Lamarck's ideas. And they are reanalyzing Lamarck's ideas by studying epigenetics. There's another theory that talks about evolution. It's quite famous by people. It is, of course, Darwin's ideas and, of course, Wallace's theory. Wallace is not that famous, but Wallace and Darwin created these ideas at the same time. They presented this theory in the same congress, in the same scientific conference. Darwin had written a book about this topic, and Wallace had written an article. Due to this fact, Wallace agreed on the fact that Darwin could be considered the father of evolutionary theory, but they had the same idea at the same time. This is the idea of competition. Dr. Lee Margulis says that evolution happens due to cooperation. Dr. Margulis says that mitochondria are a symbiosis of substances that got into cells, and consequently, mitochondria were created. Okay, but now let's go back to Darwin's ideas. Darwin's theory depends on observation, of course, and that's true. Darwin says that when an animal has a cub with a genetic change, of course, we have to remember that the word genes did not exist in Darwin's time. So when these offspring have an altered characteristic, this characteristic, of course, has to be tested in the environment. If this is an advantage, so the offspring is going to be stronger, and then we're going to have more cubs. If it's a weakness, this is going to disappear because the animal is going to be weak. So what I'm trying to say is that disadvantages tend to be extinguished, and changes that are beneficial that would make those descendants stronger and more adapted to the environment, those characteristics would be disseminated to the offspring. So when we talk about the changes, it could be beneficial or not. Let me give an example. Imagine there is a dog that was that is very that has lots of fur. In Mexico, for example, it's a hot country, so if you have a dog with lots of fur, that could be bad for the dog, so it's going to disappear. But imagine we have a dog that was born in Alaska. That would be beneficial because we know that Alaska is super cold. And then, of course, there's a higher likelihood of having furry animals in Alaska. Neo-Darwinists are people that studied Darwin's theories, and they coupled genetics to these ideas, thanks to Gregor Mendel's ideas. So those scientists are able to explain most part of these genetic mutation that cause changes in descendants, in the offspring, and how those changes are tested. But there is a problem with the new Darwinists. They say that there is the idea of chance. So when we talk about chance, it, I would say that in general, scientists do not admit chance. Scientists admit that we have causes and effects, of course, that are correlated. If you say that there is no cause, if you say that something happens by chance, so if you say that things happen without causes, they happen arbitrarily by chance, this is not a scientific evidence for many scientists. Explanations, of course, are tough to understand. When we talk about probabilities, most of those genetic changes are deleterious. Most descendants with those changes do not survive because those changes lead to problems in the being's metabolism, so on and so forth. That's just an example. And let me tell you something else. Neo-Darwinists cannot explain the development process of highly complex structures. That's why there are some theories that are, I would say, important uh, to be understood. Those theories have to do with evolution, of course, and they have to do with an intention. In other words, we would have an intention behind the biological process. Dr. Michael was the first person who studied this. Many people say that he's a creationist, but actually he's not. People that have read his book, Darwin's Black Box by Michael B. See what I'm saying. So actually, let's talk about Dr. B's ideas. When we talk about blood clotting, in order to have blood clotting, we have to have 14 enzymes. If you just have one and then the other and then the other, that of course is not useful. It takes time. All 14 enzymes have to happen simultaneously. So why do I have to have an enzyme that is useless, waiting for the other 13 enzymes? You see, so when we study blood clotting is ready. And of course, this is important for bones. Of course, this is also important for the complement system, that is of utmost importance for the body and other systems. Michael mentions another thing. He talks about the eye. Eyes are so complex, aren't they? And Dr. Michael B. also says that shoes are not the founding fathers of the rockets, so to speak. Of course, because rockets are highly complex. And shoes are important as well, but they are different projects. They have different structures. They have different designs. Shoes did not lead to rockets. So Dr. Michael B doesn't mention who the designer is, who the creator is, who created this development, but he says that it is an important element, and that's really true. And Lamarck's ideas, like Lamarck's observations are true too, and Darwin's ideas are true too. Now, neo-Darwinists and neo-Lamarckists are able to understand biological and genetic processes that are, of course, true as well. So we are talking about those theories. They are highly complex, and of course, they are true. And when we include reincarnation to those ideas, we are able to notice that the intelligent principle evolves, and in the next generation, the intelligent principle can, of course, go back, can recognize a body, it can deliberately cause genetic changes, and through its learning as an individual, in a previous life, this, of course, makes the principal leave an inheritance. Those elements are going to complete one another, and reincarnation is able to understand from a holistic perspective. Reincarnation can explain lots of gaps that were not understood in the past, from and theories were not able to understand this from the past. Albert Einstein said that God does not throw dice with the universe, because he said that quantum mechanics apparently said that everything was random, but actually that's not true. It is probabilistic, but this quote from Albert Einstein is important because it talks about two things. Einstein believed in the existence of a creator, of the first cause, and he didn't believe in chance, in randomness. Einstein believed in cause and effect. So when we talk about the study of evolution and other theories, we're able to understand that palingenesis out fills up all gaps. It validates Lamarck and Darwin, and is connected to genetics. It is a step forward. On top of those conceptual theories, on top of those ideas, we do have experimental reasons when we talk about reincarnation. The first one has to do with genetics itself. For most of us that are over 40, we learned at school uh, the idea of genetic determinism. We used to believe that genetics was able to understand life completely and human beings consequently. And this idea is very strong even nowadays when we talk about this topic, and we're going to read articles. Even within universities and colleges, there are many professors, biologists that say that genes are deterministic, fully deterministic, and we know that that's not true. The Genome Project debunked this idea, and nowadays we know that genes are actually pieces of software, apps, so to speak, as an analogy. They could be activated or not. They could, of course, transform themselves, modify themselves, improve themselves. So when we talk about genetic methylation, which is a very important process for genetic suppression and for the expression of genes. So we have a myriad of genes, all the apps, okay, in the nucleus. So you can choose which genes can be manifested and which genes are not going to be manifested. This is a new condition regarding genes. They are related to software, so they do not command the cell, because somebody, of course, has to say which software is going to be used and which software is not going to be used. As an analogy, epigenetics discusses this idea. It talks about the impact of the environment on that, on inhibiting or promoting the action of those genes. They are like pieces of software. They are related to groups of proteins, the proteomes, that have been studied for a long time, and they were associated to genomes. We know that proteomes are determined to the characteristics of beings, and proteomes are going to be produced through genes, of course, through the chosen genes. And by whom? By whom? That's the question. There's a very important article that I read by Dr. Kevin Egan from Science, and he talked about genetic instability of cells that were removed for the production of clones. And he was able to notice that there were some sort of labels, genetic labels on the cells. Let's imagine a sheep cell was going to be removed for cloning another sheep. So when this cell was removed for the cloning process, he was able to notice that in the nucleus of that cell, there were some labels called imprinted. They are the marked genes. They were suppressed. So when the cell was removed in order to do the cloning process, those imprinted would disappear. And when the doctor was able to create a clone by using this cell, the imprinted, these labels they appeared again, but they wouldn't appear on the same places. They would choose different genes, even though the animal was able to evolve, it was the same animal. They were identical twins. In my opinion, Dr. Kevin Egan and his team were able to show reincarnation in the lab for the very first time in human history. So when we didn't have labels, that was possible. Yes, of course. And what happened to those cells? They would multiply the same way. They wouldn't produce another being. We had an amorphous mass. In order to have an animal, a cloned animal, we had to have the imprinted. And those imprinted ones, they were never the same. If we want to analyze fingerprints, even though you can choose identical twins, they are clones because they have the same nuclei. And identical twins, they do have the same mitochondrial chromosome. So they are genetically identical beings, and they do have different fingerprints, don't they? They behave differently, they have different personalities, and they were, of course, individuals that came from the same uterus, and of course, they lived in the same social environment. So what I'm trying to say is that we are able to understand that having the same genes would not lead to the creation of the same person. So that's why genes were not completely deterministic. They are important, of course, but they were not the only factor. They are the software that are feeding the biological machine, but actually the one who's commanding the machine chooses the genes that are going to be activated or not. This, of course, has to do with uncle genes as well. And of course, this can be applied to other properties and possibilities that genes have. And of course, it can be seen in living beings. All right, so now let's talk about a different topic. Let's talk about a different perspective, past memories. And of course, this body of evidence has been ignored, has been underestimated, but we know that memories of past lives is important. And some researchers that studied this topic wrote articles and books of very good quality and by using very advanced scientific methodology. We had Dr. Banji, an Indian doctor, and he studied this topic. This Indian doctor studied kids, and he noticed that kids that were 2, 3 years old, they started to say that they were not who they really were. They are a reincarnation of other people. Dr. Ian Stevenson, who I'm going to mention in the future, they say that it is another personality. So the current personality says that the child is not really that child. It is a different person. Those kids usually manifest those memories up to the age of 6, 7, then they start to forget those memories, mainly if those memories are underestimated or ignored. This happens in the Western world. Parents say, oh, so this is just something silly, so it's just an illusion, and of course, as time goes by, kids forget that. In the Eastern world, in countries that where people believe in reincarnation, this is, of course, encouraged. Parents ask questions to their kids, and sometimes scientists wanted to study this theme. This Indian doctor studied this topic for more than 30 years. He would talk to those kids, and then he would check if there was a correspondence between the memories and evidence. Dr. Banerjee wrote 6 books about the topic. But actually, the most important person in this field is Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist from Virginia. He studied this topic for 40 years. He wrote a book with more than 2,000 pages called Reincarnation and Biology. And he was able to study lots and lots of details, and he studied more than 2,000 cases, and he chose the best of the best out of those 2,000 cases. Those cases, if I'm not mistaken, more than 200 cases. And in his book, Reincarnation Biology, he describes the methodology, the care that he had to be aware of, the details, of course, in order to gather so much evidence, in order to show that reincarnation is a fact. Dr. Ian Stevenson, he added something else. He said he studied birthmarks and malformation. This study is of utmost importance. Let me tell you why. Because we're talking about objective evidence and that related to documentation. So when Dr. Ian Stevenson talked to the child, he would analyze the child as well in order to see if the child had malformations or birthmarks. And then, in general, these kids had passed away due to violent deaths, fast deaths. And I would say that's a very important characteristic. Maybe this is an important mechanism. Maybe this is a physiological mechanism that, of course, creates birthmarks. And that's why maybe those individuals remember their past lives. But, anyways, so Dr. Ian Stevenson wanted to understand by talking to the child, by analyzing the birthmarks. He wanted to analyze autopsies and reports, and he would compare wounds and cuts and bruises, maybe stabs. He was able to compare documents to birthmarks. He was able to compare those documents to malformations, and he was able to find an exact match. So let me give you an example. Sometimes people say, so how many white crows are necessary to prove the existence of white crows? Just one, of course, but if you can find one white crow, that would be enough, right? So Dr. Ian Stevenson just wanted to find one case, a perfect match, in order to prove that reincarnation was a fact. Actually, he showed us more than 200 cases, you see? And why isn't this accepted? Prejudice, simply as that. Because, of course, scientists have to understood this, have to understood reincarnation as a scientific hypothesis that could be validated or studied. This kind of fact shows us that the previous personality has an impact on the current one, and this, of course, goes hand in hand with what I've just mentioned about genetics. So the intelligence is able to produce genetic changes in the individual's bodies, genetic mutations that could be beneficial or not. And of course, that's what I've just mentioned. There is indeed another important factor that emphasizes those theories, that confirms those theories. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. The biggest majority of those birthmarks cannot be explained from a scientific perspective. In general, A normal adult has 15 birthmarks in general, okay? Just an average. But when you want to evaluate this in an adult, many scars or marks they have appeared after the person's birth. So Dr. Ian Stevenson wanted to understand birthmarks, of course, in the very beginning, before the child was, of course, exposed to traumas or accidents or any kind of action that could cause a mark on the child's body. Let me say something else. Of course, we're talking about birthmarks that are not really bad, of course. They can have an aesthetical impact, but they're not that bad. And birthmarks have no explanation. And Dr. Ian Stevenson correlated those birthmarks to past lives. And by doing this, he was able to understand and to gather lots of evidence that are really robust, to be honest. Regarding malformations, there are many causes for that. Medication, of course. In the past we know that thalidomide was a medicine that was used and would lead to malformation of the upper limbs. We have some diseases such as rubella and other congenital diseases. We can have problems during delivery. We have radiation and other elements. So there are many factors involved. But of course, those causes do explain actually just a minor part of malformations. More than 50% of those malformations have no explanation whatsoever. So that's why we should understand those issues that were proposed by Dr. Ian Stevenson, because this is really relevant, and this has an impact on the data he had collected. And this, of course, has an impact on the work he had performed. He passed away, Dr. Ian Stevenson passed away, but Dr. Gene Tucker, who is a psychiatrist that works in Ian Stevenson's department, continues his work. Dr. Tucker, he is not he's not religious, and he studies the topic in a very robust way. He has gathered lots of evidence. Dr. Tucker and Dr. Stevenson hadn't met. When Dr. Tucker became a professor in Virginia, Dr. Stevenson had already passed away. But Dr. Tucker follows the same ideas because of the scientific method. Let me mention another important scientific field that could talk a lot about reincarnation. So if we are dualists, we believe that the brain is a manifestation of the mind and not the other way around. So the mind is not a consequence of the brain. So if you believe that everything depends on matter, the mind is an epiphenomenon of the brain. So if your brain doesn't work, there is no mind. There are some studies that say that the mind continues existing without the brain. The near-death experiences are one of those hints. During the resuscitation process, when we have the individual that is dead, so the electroencephalogram is not showing brain activity, so this person wouldn't have any kind of memory, any kind of perception, right? And we are able to understand actually that we can see that individuals that had near-death experiences remember what was happening during his death. He is able to describe colors, the environment, and this, of course, will be impossible if you believe in the mind as a consequence of the brain. We also have past life regression. Past life regression talks about reincarnation. There are many theories, many hypotheses that, of course, go against past life regression therapy. It is not really a memory, but actually it could be a representation of what the individual had in terms of traumas. I would say that in many cases that could be a good reason, but Dr. Julio Prieto Paris studied through function neuroimages. He was able to study past life regressions. And he was able to notice that those areas of the brain that are activated are actually related to memories. So the brain itself is saying that this is a memory, not some sort of construction to convey the idea of pain or emotional distress. This body of evidence is robust, in my opinion. And of course, there are other things that are being developed, have just started. We have altered states of consciousness, especially mediumship, the ability of consciousness being able to get in contact with another consciousness. Those ideas are very positive, in my opinion, and they have been studied for a long time in a very serious way, in a very good way. Some years ago, all psychiatrists would say that a medium was crazy, was hallucinating. And of course, this is not true. DSM-4, which is a document that talks about mental illnesses, says that this is a hypothesis. Of course, we have dissociative problems that are pathological, but of course, other cases are not. So this means that maybe of course, certain mediumistic trances are not pathological. It depends, of course, on the context. And this is something really important, and people have been studying this a lot. There are many authors that study the physiology of this process. Dr. Marco Aurelio Jr. is an example of an expert. His master's degree and his doctor's degree is on that. And of course, cognitive therapy, which is connected to patients who suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder, this the study of neuroimages show that the individual's desire modifies this person's neurons. So there are neurocircuits that cause this obsessive compulsive disorder. And when you apply a therapy and this therapy is fruitful, those changes can be noticed. This means that the brain can be changed through desire, not the other way around. So this is a very important factor, a very important dualistic factor, in my opinion, when we talk about the establishment of this theory. Let me just quote something from Dr. Ian Stevenson. It's a very important excerpt. I think it sums up everything that we have been talking about dualism, not only in philosophy, but also in science. When we talk about concepts and experiments. Here we go. He says that mind it does not depend on the body. Of course, it continues living, and of course, it can be associated to a body in the future. So this is what I've just said. And Dr. Hernani Guimarães Andrade, who was an engineer and an expert that worked with Dr. Ian Stevenson, in many cases here in Brazil, he wrote a book called Reincarnation in Brazil. I highly recommend this book. It is a very interesting book, very robust. It has lots of data, lots of statistics. And Dr. Hernani Guimarães Andrade says the following. Dr. Hernani concludes by saying the following. He says that the idea of rebirth as a dogma for many philosophies is not a belief anymore, but now is going to be a biological law. And let me just conclude my speech. Of course, maybe we don't have definite proof. This is not possible, of course. Science is made of evidence. And what is that? What is evidence? You're bringing something that shows that your hypothesis is true. But evidence, of course, apparently can be true, of course, and maybe through other studies we can notice that this evidence was false, or maybe that evidence was incomplete, or it was not that good. That's how science evolves. Of course, you present lots of evidence. When you have a hypothesis, you can, of course, gather evidence. If you're able to deny this hypothesis, it's false, of course. But if you want to say that hypothesis is true, you have to try to deny it at every time. And of course, you're not going to be able to do this if the hypothesis is really true. So when you cannot prove that something is false, it means it is true. That's why we talk about proof. Actually, this is relative. We can have lots of evidence about reincarnation, and we have a plethora of evidence, as I've just mentioned. In order to prove this as a law, we have to have scientists understanding this, and they have to overcome prejudices. As Dr. Ian Stevenson said, science evolves as people die. So those researchers that we have nowadays, the gatekeepers, the ones who, of course, write many articles, they are the editors. They are where they are by, of course, applying the materialistic, reductionist, monist paradigm. They're not going to abandon this paradigm. Thanks to new kinds of evidence, new ideas, we are going to have more people. And of course, as time goes by, people are going to die, and we're going to have new scientists, new thinkers, bringing new ideas and modifying the way we think. This is the path that we are following. And we have been noticing in the past 25 years or so, I would say 30, to be honest, I have been noticing that many pieces of research are revolutionary. They have more evidence, and the scientific community is starting to accept reincarnation or palingenesis as a biological law. Regarding philosophy, of course, this is something that we cannot understand. This has a huge impact on philosophy. And of course, we're going to have lots of explanations, and things are going to make more sense. The sky's the limit. I hope you liked my lecture, and I hope I was able to raise questions, of course, and to tease you in a good way, of course. If I have the chance, I would like to answer questions. Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I am at your disposal. Thank you.
All right, so now is the time for Q&A session with Dr. Decio. And with that, let me stop sharing over here and saying, Dr. Decio, thank you so much for your dedication, for your work, and for the opportunity you are giving us today. So I will pass the word on to you, and for everybody here, if you have a question, just type in a text or say it, and we'll try our best to translate or answer those. Okay, Gloria?
Yes, on the cloned sheep, I had a little trouble following that. So the physiology was identical, but what you're saying is that the sheep were different in personality, and that was the proof of reincarnation?
Para mim, Aninha, para eu não falhar nenhum detalhe.
Ela está perguntando sobre o caso da clonagem das ovelhas, né? Se a questão da genética e da fisiologia, se era apenas uma diferença em termos de fisiologia, mas a personalidade, na verdade, era completamente diferente, se era esse o tópico, né? O foco.
É muito difícil a gente avaliar a personalidade da ovelha, né?
Yeah, it's very difficult to evaluate the personality of the sheep.
Quem tem animal em casa sabe que eles têm personalidade diferente, um cachorro, um gato.
But if you have an animal, a pet in your house, so you can tell pretty much how different they are, you know, a dog or a cat.
Mas eu acho que existe um modelo natural que são os gêmeos univitelinos.
But in Dr. Decio opinion, there is a model, a natural model that is the twins, the identical twins.
Porque eles são exatamente os mesmos em termos genéticos e fisiológicos.
Because they are identical not only in terms of genetics, but also in the physiological terms.
São pessoas completamente diferentes, com gostos e comportamentos diferentes.
But they are completely different people, different tastes, different personalities and behaviors.
E uma coisa que me chama a atenção é que, apesar de toda essa semelhança genética, eles têm impressões digitais diferentes.
And one thing that calls his attention is, despite of all the fact that they are identical, genetically speaking, if you will, they have different fingerprints.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gloria. Anyone else? Any other question? I have one here, Doctor. So you mentioned the birthmarks, okay? And then you said depending on the type of death in the past life, then there is a chance that a birthmark will show up, right? So my question is, in your opinion, evidently there is no right or wrong, or this is we cannot tell for sure what is the truth, but in your opinion, how this traumatic death can cause a mark on the new body of that reincarnated spirit, if you will. Does it make sense?
Yeah. Bom, a primeira coisa é que, assim, as marcas de nascença não têm uma explicação científica.
Okay, so first thing is the birthmarks, they do not have a scientific explanation.
Mesmo os gêmeos univiterinos, como nós falamos, eles têm marcas de nascenças diferentes.
Even the identical twins, they have different birthmarks.
Um estudo que foi feito mostra que, em média, quando nós nascemos, nós temos 15 marcas de nascença, em média.
There is a study that was done in the past saying that in average, we all have about 15 different birthmarks.
É importante fazer essa medida ao nascer, porque muitas marcas são adquiridas durante a vida e a gente pode confundi-las de nascença.
So he's saying that it's very important to notice those birthmarks as we are born, because during the period of our life, we acquire new ones.
Mas a opinião que eu tenho sobre a sua pergunta é que o mecanismo de transmissão ou de formação dessas marcas de nascença seria o mesmo mecanismo da produção das impressões digitais.
Okay, so he's saying that in response to my question about the mechanism, he's saying that it's very interesting because he believes that the same mechanism that leads the birthmark showing up on the body is probably the same one leading the fingerprint, being different and unique for every individual.
Em cada encarnação, durante as primeiras divisões celulares, o estado do corpo espiritual projeta no corpo físico essas marcas.
Okay, so he's saying that in every incarnation, the spiritual state of that individual will imprint all how did you say? Will imprint all the conditions and important status, if you will, on the new body. Thank you. So we have Lloyd. Lloyd, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, if there's time. One is talking about fingerprints. have there been any solved cases of reincarnation where they've been able to match the fingerprints of the former lifetime with the present lifetime?
Yeah, this is an interesting question, but no, because in one incarnation and another, you change your mind, you change your soul, and in the new body, you have new print marks, yeah, digital marks,
Yeah.
fingerprints, yeah. One research in Brazil tried to make this correlation, and they don't find the same fingerprints. But he knows about he was scientific policial, CSI. It was the research, and they find some similarities, but it's not the same print, the same finger marks.
So you're talking about the forensic?
Yes,
research,
forensic, scientific forensic. Yeah,
But they did find similarities, just not exact.
they find some similarities, but not
Matching exact the same.
yes.
Yeah.
But is it
That's-
similar enough to be significant? Is kind of the question that comes to my mind.
Yeah, it's about the proof and the evidence, the difference and the proof and the evidence.
Yeah.
Depending that you think about previously. Yeah. I like the work of this research, but the most of the other people don't give importance to that.
Could you spell out the name of that researcher, and I'll put it in the chat so that I can look it up later?
I can't remember now.
Oh,
It's
okay.
a long time ago, and he don't print his
Oh,
research.
it's not published. Yeah.
Talk
Okay.
about in the spirituality meetings and Spiritism researchers, and he don't publish. Yeah.
Yeah. One other quick question. Actually, this is a huge topic, I suppose, and you can't prove it, but have there been reports in either hypnosis or from small kids of past lives, either on other planets or in other life forms?
Yes, we had some relates about that. Here in Brazil, you have a book about Maria Teresa. She's a president of the past life therapies, and he talked about two patients, and the therapy relates experiences in another planets, and the migration from these planets to Earth. It's very interesting.
What is her name? Maria Teresa?
I have to look. His book is in my.
Her book. Okay.
Yeah,
Her
her book is in my Bible, but I have to see.
Okay.
After the questions, I will
Okay,
talk.
let me know, and then I can send you everybody the book name and the author. Thank you, Lloyd. You have any other question, Lloyd?
I think I'll give the floor up to the next person. I
Thank
don't want to
you.
hog it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Livia, please.
Oh, thank you, Lord. You can come back later. Yeah, I remember some researchers talk about the same signature or very similar writing. Sometimes they have in past lives or not.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Ela está perguntando sobre a assinatura, às vezes são iguais. So
Oh.
the signature between two
Yeah.
lives. If
No,
they-
in the medionic psychography, yes. But in the remembers of past life, no. No. You have the calligraphy. It's something strongly ligado, né? Eu não sei como é que fala. Connected with the brain.
Yeah.
The brain and your learning of na escrita, né? Deixa eu falar em português, estou me enrolando. Então, é muito difícil, a sua letra está ligada ao treinamento deste cérebro que você usa hoje durante a sua infância.
Okay, so he's saying that we do not see any evidence of someone keeping the same calligraphy or the same handwriting, because the handwriting is something is almost like an attribute of this physical brain.
Quando um médium está psicografando e vai receber a assinatura do espírito,
and when the medium is channeling and is ready to sign as the spirit used to sign,
ele suprime o córtex motor do médium.
so the medium, now he's talking medicine-ish, or you know, so when the medium is ready to sign the signature of the spirit he's or she is channeling, then the medium or the process, the mechanism that happens is that the cortex, the cerebral cortex is being subtracted or suppressed, and then the characteristics of the spirit will prevail over the brain or the behavior of the brain of that medium.
We can see that in the velocity of the psychography.
So na velocidade?
Yeah, you see Chico Xavier or Divaldo. They make the psychography very fast, but when the spirit was making his signature, the medium write very, very slow, because it's not the medium brain is writing, but the spirit is writing.
And that's
Well,
I can see that a lot of times.
Thank you. Can I ask you just one more? Yeah, I've seen some researchers from, including Jim Tucker. They see that most of the children remember past lives in traumatic memories. And they concluded that these cases are, or maybe only who had traumatic death reincarnate. So this, I don't know, it's a good conclusion, but it's a hypothesis. But maybe I would think they remember because it was a traumatic death. It's easier to remember. I don't know. What do you think about it?
Yeah, as memórias traumáticas, assim, quando você vai fazer uma terapia de vida passada, a primeira coisa que é recomendada pelos pesquisadores é não hipnotizar.
So when you do a therapy, a past life remembrance type of therapy, the first thing that the doctors tell you is not to, what did you say?
Hipnotizar.
Not to
Hypnosis.
do hypnosis.
É. Porque nessas situações você derruba todas as defesas psíquicas do paciente.
Because in that situation, you kind of put down all the psychic defenses, if you will, of the patient.
O paciente tem que fazer a regressão em estado de consciência alterada.
So the patient needs to do that regression in a state of altered mind.
E o terapeuta, ele sugere que o paciente vá à memória traumática daquele sintoma que ele está tendo nesse momento.
And then the therapist will suggest that the patient reach out to that trauma, the traumatic memory.
Se ele tem condições de lidar com isso, ele revive. Senão, ele evita.
If he or she is capable or is in good condition to face that, then that will happen. Otherwise, the patient himself or herself will avoid reaching out to that memory.
Eu ouvi um relato de caso de um psiquiatra que fez uma regressão de vida passada com a paciente, porque a paciente tinha curiosidade de saber quem ela tinha sido.
So he's talking about a case when a patient did the past life memory type of therapy, and she did that because she was curious about her past life.
Ele fez usando a hipnose.
The therapist used the hypnosis.
Ela reviveu um momento traumático.
And then she recalled a very traumatic moment.
E depois da terapia, ela desenvolveu lupus.
And after the therapy, then she developed lupus.
Que é uma doença autoimune, é uma autoagressão.
Which is an auto or immune disease.
Então, é por isso que a gente chama a regressão de vidas passadas de cirurgia psíquica.
So that's why we call past life therapy a psychic surgery.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Livia. Anybody else? I do have one more question over here. Dr. Decio is so if we can do that, if we can go back in, I mean, not in time, but if we can reach out to a past memory, do you think this physical brain that we have is the repository of a past life, of that memory? Or what exactly do we reach out when we do this type of therapy?
Conta isso para mim, Ana.
Se seria o cérebro físico, o repositório das memórias, ou o que de fato a gente está acessando? É o cérebro físico ou é alguma outra coisa?
Não. Nós temos uma memória cerebral e uma memória perispirítica.
So we have a brain, a physical brain memory, and a perispiritic memory. So just a sec. If you happen to watch the videos on the mechanics of mediumship, so we mentioned that the spirit is surrounded by or wrapped up by this main, we call membrane, or called perispirit, and that's the one that he's talking about right now. Go ahead, please.
Anna, we can say that is an astral body.
Yeah, the
It
astral
is
body.
more
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, thank you.
I prefer spiritual body too.
Yeah,
because
spiritual body.
Astral it's a part of the perispirit. It's one of the parts of the perispirit. You have maybe seven parts. And we have in our brain, you have like a RAM memory in the computer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in the perispirit memory, you have the memory from the high disk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And because that when we are disincarnated,
Mm-hmm.
you remember all of your life, because you are making the upload of the brain memory to the perispiritic memory.
Mm-hmm.
And when you make this kind of therapy of past lives memories, you have the download of the memory of the perispirit from the brain
perispirit
memory
to the physical brain.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
something like that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Lloyd, please go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Jacqueline Rivkin asked about if a person's going through a hard time in this lifetime, does past regressive therapy help to come up with a solution to this life's problem? And that, I'm kind of piggybacking on that now that I think about it. I'm wondering if there's been any cases having to do with suicide in a past life come up, any research as to how that tends to affect the current life, or the amount of time between incarnations, or, you know, has there been any light shown on any of that?
Precisa traduzir? Ele está perguntando se as pessoas que são, que, por exemplo, tiveram, morreram de suicídio, né, por cometerem suicídio, se existe, então, se existe, yeah, thank you, Dale, se existe alguma correlação. Could you please go back and say again your question, Lloyd? I'm kind of
Any research or knowledge about suicide? I'm not really specific in what I'm looking for, but just how does that affect how soon you come back? You know, what light can be shown on what people go through when they get to the other side, when they've committed suicide, and how that affects their next life.
Casos específicos, né, de suicídio.
Se tem algum relato, se tem alguma pesquisa com relatos.
And Jan Stevenson research, where we know a lot of cases of suicide. One of them, they shot a gun here, and the bullets go out here. Yeah. And in the autopsy relatory, we have a area from alopecia. It's ausência de pelos aqui.
Okay, so no hair over here.
Yeah. And Lisa.
It was a smooth area.
Yeah, and here another alopecia area, but rugosa. I don't know in English.
And over here, another area without any hair, but in this case, it was not as smooth. It was kind of rough kind of skin.
O orifício de entrada de arma de fogo é sempre redondinho, o orifício de saída é estrelado, né?
And in a ballistic study, we said there is evidence that the orifice of where the bullet is getting in is always very round, but when it comes out, is kind of scattered. Is in this.
I'm wondering if there's anything psychological.
This kind of in the past life memories, just the birthmarks, but in the near-death experience, we have some kinds of near-death that we call negative near-death experience, and most of cases, the near-death experience is something good.
Mhm.
The person feeling very good, peaceful, harmonic, but the negative experience, all of them was in the suicide cases. O indivíduo tentou suicídio e não conseguiu.
Okay, so in this case, it's talking about that that individual tried to commit suicide, but didn't
Succeed.
didn't succeed. Yeah.
Yeah, the experience is very, very disturbed. It's a negative experience.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
A conclusão que eu cheguei é que morrer é bom, mas você tem que passar pela porta certa.
So he's saying that the conclusion he came up with is that passing away is good, but you have to make sure that you are going through the right door. Thank you, Lloyd. Annie, please.
Hi, my question is, if a mother and child share the same birthmark in exact same place, exactly the same, it's identical, does that have anything to do with reincarnation? Thank you.
It's a good question. Dr. Ian Stevenson related 2 cases of that. If the experience is the same, it's so traumatic for the mother and the children. And another experience, you can have the same birthmark. It's something in common of the 2 spirits. These 2 spirits, the mother and the child.
The child. And that is because of what the reason, or is because of his trauma, or?
Yeah, what brings the birthmarks is it's your memories, traumatic memories in order, and these memories make the difference in the moment of you are building your new body in the reincarnation, and you can change some genetic spots, some chromosomes or genes, or in your the surface of your skin, some kind of memory, generally traumatic memory. And if you have 2 spirits and they have the same memory, you can produce the same birthmark. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Annie. Mauricio, please. Oh, Gracinha.
Yeah, it's me. You mentioned that in the past life therapy, you have access to a memory that is like in a hard drive, right? A bigger memory in the perispirit. The question is, once the therapy is finished and you had access to this memory, you download it, does it stay in your brain or it's forgotten?
Stay in brain, because you give to the RAM memory, and when you make the download, you stay there, because you have after the memory is coming, you have to make the ressignificated. Não sei se é assim que fala. Ressignificar. É assim?
I do not know how to say resignificar.
Repurpose?
Repurpose, yeah.
Repurpose. Because the trauma make some kind of symptoms, and you have to repurpose the cause to make another, to finish the symptoms. Yeah, and you have to make that with your conscience now, not in your past now. And we have you take your memories and work these memories to make another effect in your brain, in your body, in your mind. And you have to do that with the therapist. It's very important, this detail, because you have to make this repurpose.
Obrigado.
Mauricio. Gloria, before you go, let me, because there's this question over here in the chat, is from Jacqueline, is a very interesting one, Dr. Decio. She's asking, if a person is going through a very hard time in this lifetime, will doing past life regressive therapy help to come with a solution to this life's problem?
It's a good question, right? But I don't know. Maybe if your difficulty now is linked with your past experience, yes. But indeed, normally your memories of the past as forgot because they are not good to live now. You have a new opportunity now. You have to live this new opportunity. You have to make what you can do to resolve these difficulties now. Yeah, but sometimes it's something that can help you remember this memory in the past.
Yeah, I remember reading some books from Dr. Brian Weiss, and he was listing several cases when his patients died like drunk, anyway, so traumatic deaths, and as soon as they knew what happened, then that it was not that their lives became easier, it's just that now they knew what the root cause was, and then and also they understood that the situation changed. They are no longer living in that life, so it makes it a little bit better, or at least more bearable, you know, not so uncomfortable.
The therapist that I know, they started the therapist now, and talking about your actual personality and your difficulties.
Yeah.
If you can find the cause now, you go to the past life.
Yeah.
The first step is try to resolve
Always now.
the problem now.
Now, yeah. Thank you. Gloria, you had your hand raising?
I was going to say what you two have already said, that Dr. Brian Weiss, and the book is Many Lives, Many Masters, is a psychiatrist, and he had patients he couldn't cure until he took them through to find a past life regression, and that was the only success he had with them as a psychiatrist. And so he's written several books on that topic, and that I was just going to say what you've said. Yeah. So thanks.
Yeah.
Brian Weiss is the master of the past life, therapy. It's great.
Yes. Maria, please.
Eu vou fazer minha pergunta em português, aí você traduz, tá? Eu queria perguntar, Decio, porque a terapias de vidas passadas, ela não é considerada pelo Conselho de Medicina, ou não era, eu não sei se isso mudou aqui no Brasil ou fora. Você pode trazer alguma notícia para a gente?
So Maria is saying that this regression therapy was not considered by the association of the Medicine Association as a approved one, at least not in Brazil. And she's asking if that has changed recently, if it's now considered a formal therapy.
Infelizmente não mudou, não, Maria José.
No, it hasn't changed.
O
It's not
Júlio,
recognized as a therapy, yeah. Mhm.
Júlio Preto Pérez, ele tentaram tirar a licença dele como psicólogo por causa do trabalho dele em terapia regressiva.
Yeah, it hasn't changed. And some of the doctors and therapists applying this, they have suffered some pressure, and they were trying to take those therapists, the license of those therapists out, so because they were practicing that.
Eu tenho uma teoria sobre isso, viu, Maria
Ok.
José?
Ah, tá. Eu tenho uma outra pergunta, talvez você aproveite para responder. Por que os médicos relutam tanto para aceitar coisas fora do que pode ser tocado ou comprovado cientificamente?
Okay, Maria is asking the question that I had in my mind as well. Why do the doctor reluctant or refuse so much something that cannot be touched or proved in a physical matter?
Because we birth, nós nascemos from the materialistic paradigm.
Okay, because we are born from this materialistic paradigm. Yes. Okay.
It's very difficult to think different. You have to make some fights to yourself.
Yes.
To change your way of your things. But it's very, very libertador. Freedom. When you can think out of the box.
Yes.
Something like, oh my God, the answer is here, and I can't read because I am looking for the wrong place. Now I'm looking to the right place, and I can read the truth.
Mhm.
And it was a great difference in my life.
Mhm.
Like a doctor, like a physician, because I discovered this way of thinking. I discovered the post-materialistic paradigm.
Mhm.
I was finished my PhD,
Mhm.
and it was something very strong in my life. And I try to talk about this from my students and my colleagues,
Mhm.
but we have a great resistance about that. Yeah.
Were you a spiritist since early on, or only now?
No. Before my discovery, I just believed in God.
Okay.
But the religion that I learned in my family, I can believe it. They was Catholic,
Okay.
and I can't believe in that God, the God
Okay.
that the I don't know. It's Judaico-Christian
Mhm.
culture.
Jewish Christian.
Culture. Yeah, it's, the God that put his child in burning in the hell
Yes.
for eternity. Oh no,
No.
it's not
Yeah.
my God.
Okay.
Obrigada, Decio. Thank you.
Lívia, please. Livia? Oh, you're on mute.
I was wondering if Dr. Jung talked more about reincarnation. He just talked about the ancestors' memories and something like that, but I know he believed in reincarnation. I think
Yes, he
really
did.
believe that. And maybe some another psychologists would treat. I think that it depends a lot of the therapeutic and I would say the understanding of that to treat people. I like a lot, very a lot, Brian Weiss. He really teaches very well about that. Thank you, Decio.
The Council of Psychologists in Brazil, they are very radical in the materialist paradigm. It's something that I can understand because they study the mind and they talk about the material things. It's very difficult to me to understand. But I think that they have afraid of a lot of people in Brazil talking about the psychology, not how a science, but
As a science.
something, yeah, something different. I have my son, meu filho mais velho, ele está fazendo psicologia.
My older son is studying psychology.
E ele é ateu e materialista.
And he is atheist and materialist.
E eu não entendo como que ele consegue estudar psicologia e entender coisas a partir disso.
And he doesn't understand how he's able to study psychology and yet understand and grasp everything about it without believing in something else.
Eu acho que por isso que o Conselho de Psicologia Brasileiro é tão radical. Eles têm medo de não serem considerados científicos.
So that's why the Council of Doctors of Physicians in Brazil is so radical because they are very afraid of being recognized as non-scientific association.
Psychologist Council.
Oh, there's the Psychologists Council. Yeah, sorry. Thank you all. Dr. Decio, I know as well that you are very known for your knowledge on the pineal gland. And you do have a lecture on pineal gland as one of the most important elements for the mechanics of mediumship, right? So this is almost saying, please come back to this group and tell us and talk to us about the pineal gland. Yay! Yeah. Never, yeah, it's always a good thing as I really appreciate your being able to, or your being available for us, recording the videos and being today with us. I thank you so much for your time, for your dedication, for your work. And I hope you'll be here with us pretty soon, talking about pineal gland. Okay, so I will leave you with the last words for the group.
I beg your pardon.
Pardon?
Pardon for my English. It's terrible. But in the next reincarnation, it was better. And thank you for your patience to listen my ideas. I'm so grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Decio. Thank you.
Obrigado, Decio. Abraço grande, viu? Deus
Obrigado.
continue abençoando.
Obrigado.
See you on Saturday. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Obrigada também. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you all next week.
See you.
Obrigado.
Obrigada.
Bye.